Good afternoon from the Hostage Diaries. Today I'm going to discuss manipulations as usual because everything has to do with angles of exploitation based upon control. And it's that rat in the maze that I happen to be or the miracle nuclear power that is a hamster wheel. It never ends. It doesn't cost anything. It's free. Not to mention, it beautifies you in the process too. Wow, what a deal of the century. So, I just keep spilling out my interpretations are theories. I look at what I see and I interpret the actions because I have a perspective because I am the victim. The victim has perspective because I am awake to a degree, even though my body doesn't work. I'm still getting screwed, but they still don't use lube. And but I'm awake, but I can see because I can who's screwing me basically and how. And so what I'm trying to do is just interpret. So a lot of what I say is interpretation because of astronomy and society. What happens is it's either a siren light in the sky or it's astronomy or charting history sorts of mentality. And so I'm just putting together the pieces, a lot of what's going on. So I interpret how people think based upon, and then I try to understand why. I dissect what caused that, or why is it this way, which deals with the hacking, therefore creates these certain um, manipulations of the body. Because my body is not my name, my body, everything has been destroyed because they wanted to. It was body snatchers for the most part. It's just like the body snatchers. They put me in a coma. It took a long time and a lot of brainwashing. But I started doing research on my own, and I learned how to think, and then I taught myself, and then I started figuring out. Then it was all about learning to see, or you can see and not understand what you see if you don't have certain pieces. So I started filling in the gaps with all the pieces of connectivity because I'm one of the centers of I'm a galaxy swirling around me because of who I am, even though who I am not allowed to utilize. So what they did was they took like a sun and shrunk it down real small so they could carry it around pocket full of sunshine, basically, so they could in order to utilize it how they deem fit and control to be deemed as omniscient or deity titans, that sort of mentality. So I just interpret. This is a lot of interpretation, and it gets a little coarse because the interpretation, a lot of what's going on, the coarseness is a way of hiding the harsh realities in a litigious society that does not allow. It's killing comedy and any irony or satire or sarcasm. So, and there are many factions. When I say mob, a mob is a group of people that have a specific agenda. I, as a victim, provide agendas to those that are manipulating. Obviously, there aren't many goods. There's a lot on the naughty list, even though they hijack Santa's sleigh and they control the toy factory and they give them out how they see fit. So there's a lot on the naughty list because they manipulate it in the name of, well, it's this playing of the rules. Like I said, the hacking of my genetics based upon, well, it's like Enron had a bunch of trade secrets on how they traded energy, but those trade secrets would be deemed illegal contracts or implausible because they were dealing with illegal operations of trading. So that's kind of what's going on. You've got a scheme because they gambled. They gambled big time on burying me and keep it, or they gambled on slavery and hostages because they figured, well, worst case scenario, we can codify the minorities by giving them a VIP slave for cosmetics. I do a lot of beautician work, a lot of it. Even though my nickname was Beau, spelled B-E-A-U, and therefore there's the Beau Rivage by MGM, Louis B. Mayer. That doesn't matter. They want to manipulate it to be beautician, which is a gamble, but they've rigged the machine. They've taken over the house to where they can control the vault and give out. They give out bribes. They bribe everyone with reverence. Reverence, freedom of religion is a, um, a plausible entity, although it is being manipulated on so many different levels because there are so many factions of the mob utilizing it, and they're bypassing the ascension, and not to mention they've hung my entire family up. It's not, they had to hang us on. Well, they put us in zoos, to be quite honest, coma zoos, because they gambled on screwing us, and they utilize healthcare. And then I got to beautify those that screw me. They screw me for a long time, show me how much how good they are at screwing me, and then then they force me with a gun to my head to beautify them as a hostage. Now that's the deal of the century, And it's they worship the diplomas, but they obviously horrifically mismanaged my case. Therefore, I've got to beautify that it's idiots. I mean, basically, they worship diplomas, but they were idiots because they gambled so much on this, and so now I've got to make it right. So somehow that alters the system itself. And what usually the answer is? Print more money. It's all about knowing my limitations. Now, from the Truman Show, when he was a kid, they were trying to brainwash him to keep him captive. And they were saying, you got to know your limitations, Truman Show. And so they beat me down so much to try to bury my body, to keep me hidden down under the ground so they can keep control of it. It's all about controlling the wallet. My wallet is the key to all of this. It's a no-limit charge card, and they spend like madmen. I mean, just gone crazy spending. And I pay for everything. Well, my global asset bank is being pillaged, but they don't care. They don't have a best. They don't care. No, they don't care about the bank. It's like because it's global assets, they don't care, and so they pretend to be patriots when they're really war profiteers, peacenik chicken hawks, and they just keep spending and keep their hostages rather than fix the problem. Because turn the other cheek is that maxim that I must get. If somebody stabs me, I got to worship the wound in the well and then get stabbed again, turn the other cheek, and then like it, and then beautify those that stab me because they get paid. So, know my limitations. So these hacks were limitations placed upon my body. So it would be like a diversion canal. If I was a river and they started diverting water off of these, they would like dam up part of it, send it that way, dam up another part, send it that way, dam up another part, send it that way, until my body itself is bone dry in the Chihuahua Desert, in the Sahara, I get nothing. That's why one of the reasons Arizona is synonymous with, it's because Freeport McMoran was in New Orleans, and they mined us so well, and didn't pay a cent. I mean, they got the deal of forever. Nothing. Paid nothing for it. It's free. Free port, New Orleans. And they moved to Arizona because we're now bone dry because they diverted. We're jerky, And so that's one of the reasons that they diverted all my body assets, liquid assets, to others. And those others are reliant upon the flow of these assets because they thought they could get away with paying nothing. They actually believed it was free, but that doesn't make any sense because they're wrecking an entity. So my limitations were these hacks, and now they're trying to keep me contained in order to protect me because they were idiots, because they gambled, because they had to teach lessons. I don't care about these lessons. Like I said, you cannot, it would be like the Symbionese Liberation Army. We had no advisors. We had no counsel. Yet you want to utilize billions of dollars in assets because of some illegal mob loan shark contracts? Are you kidding me? That's why it's the Desperation Pelican Brief cover-up. Because they've had to bribe a lot of politicians and get them guilty like Senator Geary in the brothel with that dead girl. You know, they had to get some. They have some bodies buried to keep these schemes red. You know, they think that's engineering. Really, it's really cheap. It's dangerous. I mean, they built it on an island in the path of hurricane. You know, it's crazy. That's why probably hurricane. I mean, Super Bowl 50 is between San Jose or Santa Clara, which is on the San Andreas Fault and really bad earthquake area, or Miami, which is right there in the path of hurricane. So they're pushing for the Sun Life Stadium. What a fucking sham. They're pushing for the hurricane would be best because you could see a hurricane coming. If it's the big one earthquake, you don't really see that coming out in California. You can't predict it as much. But they screwed up so bad. So Super Bowl L 50, which is 2 years away, 3 years away, is a vision of how bad they screwed up. Right now, 47 is in New Orleans, and we all know how susceptible New Orleans is to the big flood because they gambled. Why didn't they just build an empire or a castle or pay something? But they wanted to be cheap, Jew down skateboarders, right? Daredevils. They thought we were getting Kool-Aid points, teaching lessons because they basically were doing they led me astray in order to allow them leeway. They would I never once had a good teacher. I never once had a good counselor say anything about anything. Nobody ever told me anything about anything. I did everything on my own. I did it poorly for a while because I had really bad ADHD. And it's constant turnover. My memory melts away so fast as far as because I don't think about it. My focus jumps around so much that I lose, and so of course I was very susceptible to influences, especially when I was alienated to certain pod regions. It was obviously premeditated in order to utilize. My body was worth something. So it's know my limitations, like the Truman Show, that they place upon me, even though there's criminal intent involved, illegal contracts dealing with diversions of assets under several auspices. The biggest one being the JV, the B segregation there, which diverts a ton of assets. That would be like going up to somebody's house and saying, you got to go live out in the shed while we occupy your house. It's the occupy. They've occupied my body. They've kicked me out to live out in the slave quarters, to be reverent, to be their beautician, to make them pretty for occupying my house. But then they bribe anyone and everyone. That's why you got so many drugs, so many games, you got so much just obesity, materialism in society. The party never ends. It's a drunk society as a bribe to codify because of the underlying illegal nature of the schematics. Because they didn't want it. It was too hard to pay your bills because then they would have to actually follow the rules of accounting. They hate math. The mob hates math and they hate accounting. The mob thrives on throwing. It's always the Annie get your gun, what you can do better, what you can do, I can do better mentality. So what they want to try to prove is validate the mob machine power as far as in order to take control of the assets. And therefore, I'm not allowed to participate because I've been relegated down to this low level to keep me captive because they want to utilize my power and energy because they're addicted to blood transfusion doping. They extract all my blood and pump it into clones, and they get the energy and the fringe benefits. And I just sit there as a hostage. So then I've got to beautify them and learn lessons. The lessons is a big runaround scam, I'm telling you, because I could have written books and done lessons, or I could have built things. I'm not allowed. Time is all that matters, because they are utilized. It's the flow. It's that flow of assets. They're looting assets globally. So my limitations were placed upon me where I'm locked out of my house. I'm locked out of my bank accounts. I can't use my money. They've stolen my wallet, stolen my house, and kidnapped my family. And then I got to beautify them and teach lessons because in the name of Jeebus, it's really sketchy at best. I mean, ill-gotten their gains because they gambled on. Well, we got screwed up in the first place. Um, well, insider trading sabotage was they were trying to bury our bodies. They didn't want. They didn't. There was so much evidence. They didn't believe. They want the literal black and white. You know, they are unable to. And I'm trying to manufacture into literal black and white tangible. They will not allow me to manufacture literal evidence through all the patterns. Patterns form gravitational reality, but I'm not allowed to because there is so much evidence I've uncovered. So they just want to use the wallet and occupy the house while I set out and beautify them. And they had to set up schematics in order to do that. And by doing that, they pay people with my money to keep me captive. And they've alienated. The kids are obviously really dumb. They're not very bright at all. Because they, I mean, I guess they think they can buy the world by the Noah's Ark cash, drown the world in cash is the only thing I can figure. Even though it's just bad politics, it's bad everything. It's so they've got to desecrate me to protect the victim and know my limitations that were placed upon me by illegal contracts and manipulation by various factions of the mob that are utilizing my assets in a body snatcher capacity. So the limitations are illegal contracts, first of all, and the judgment is really, really poor when you're gambling on the source being a slave. I mean, doesn't that make any sense? Doesn't that sound poor judgment to you? But that doesn't matter because it's, they've got to keep on trucking because they play the cards you dealt, but they stack the deck. Well, they got to play the cards it's a rigged deck. They stack the deck, counted cards, mechanics script, the whole bit. So I got to pay. And they got to desecrate my body. I got to be uncool. And it really is it goes back to the steel curtain with Jack Ham, Jack Lambert, and the Orange Crush defense. They even had REM, the Orange Crush. And the Monsters of the Midway is a real interesting one, especially dealing with the Bears of Chicago. That goes into the Baton Rouge Catholic High Bears and the Dungeons and Dragons Monsters of the Midway. I think that, and the Purple People Eaters from the Vikings. And so they really want to it's like the mob is afraid of competition, even though they worship games and competition, because they want it to be fair to the lowest. So they got to pit me with a certain amount of power against these lower echelons, and then they validate that the genetic manipulation of pitting me against the lowest common denominator then transfers my energy and pays for the game itself. And that right there is that's poor judgment. I don't really. I mean, I want to audit this. I refuse. I would audit it, but hey, they got guns to my head. They stole my wallet and they locked me out, and there's nobody's doing anything about it. So what can I do other than document for history and try to figure out what's actually been going on? I mean, because it would be really easy for me to package some of this material and make at least a few $1,000,000 to hire some lawyers to figure out what's real and what's not. I am trying to investigate. This is all raw intelligence data, trying to investigate and put pieces together. I'm trying to comprehend, utilize. I would like to validate my evidence, but I'm not allowed to validate it because I am so important as a hostage and a beautician, because that's once again this number. And like I said, I pay extreme for everything because I was handicapped so far down the ladder to be so weak, and I'm vulnerable. I mean, I'm in a coma laying here, a very high. It would be like finding a bag of diamonds, or no, a bag of cash. I'm like a big bag of cash that anybody that's smart enough can walk in and take. And what they're doing is using me for Kool-Aid street cred points, and but they won't fix the problem. Is I got a kryptonite spear through me, which is these hats, because it renders my body useless because the system is worship. They worship the game grid extremism. I should be able to rise above it, but they will not let me because I pay for the game itself. So my limitations are to captivity in order to provide energy and dollars for the game itself. So then they've got to render me uncool because they really want me to suffer. They've got this real hate of special. They really hate special because they think that is it's the mob worships the ability to change to it's like a swarm. If you ever seen a school of fish, they meander rapidly to change shapes, or a flock of birds. But this actually takes on the shape of and can whatever, like Annie, get your gun. Whatever you can do, I can do better. So anything I do, the mob will throw their best at me to prove that they are better than me. So I'll try something else. They'll throw somebody else. I'm doing the decathlon sort of thing, doing it all myself, or a lot of different events. They're throwing different people at me, their best, which is usually better because that's the difference between a specialist and a generalist. The mob can play numbers at me, so they will always find something better that's better than me that is an individual. But me as a whole, because not to mention I provide power to the mob itself, is and then the pets would force feed their masters. They think of it as a cool joke. This is what this really happened. The pets con their masters into being guilty. And so I've got to do reconstructive cosmetic surgery on these high-value VIP assets because their pets duped me. Even though I hung signs on the damn wall, I yelled. I had signs everywhere. As soon as I started figuring things out, I hung signs on the wall, and I tried to come up with conclusions. That's not good enough. They wanted their song and dance. They wanted their gladiators, or they wanted their porno, or whatever it was. They really wanted a snuff film. That's the new in the snuff. It was supposed to be a snuff film, but so far I'm still alive, barely. So uncool is a way of avoiding reciprocity pay. So what they want to dilute my influence to where I don't have any followers. My followers were my power, but they've distributed all that, and so then they're trying to extract all of my muscle or energy because like I said before, I'm a giant, and they want to divide off all my parts and sell them and utilize that as energy, trying to deem it as energy, but it's bad business. It's like building a high rise with just the cheapest cement that's barely even cement. And so any wind is going to blow it over, or any storm would knock it over, rather than building a strong structure because they're in hurricane path. They built it as cheap as possible because they wanted a Jew-down skateboard. That's whole mentality. So they wanted to be thrashers, gamblers. But they built a cheap structure. But they've got these miracle, so important diplomas so they've got to be able to control it so it's a weapon. They're being dumb and they're being just horrifically mean and ugly is a weapon because they've got me as to fix it. So the deep pockets of me cause cataclysmic ripple effects across the globe in order to they're trying to snuff out they're trying to solidify the earth where there won't be an earthquake or there won't be a hurricane by poor economic policy, but I think it's going to backlash anyway. So they built a really cheap structure in the path of a hurricane, the place that gets hit a lot with hurricanes or on fault lines, and one of the most dangerous active fault lines in the world. Does that make sense? But they're Doctor Who, diplomas that they worship. So now they're trying to figure out a way. Cash. And that's the answer is always cash. But not to pay their energy bill or not to pay they'll pay their pimps, but they won't pay their rent. They'll pay the pimps all they want. That's good. That's just business. Pay off the pimps, but they won't pay their rent. And so it's just a boiler room. They're Big Short. They're beating me down, not paying a cent. Cheap to prove they're shrewd tight. Because the mob is tight right now, but it'll slowly. I mean, I mean, when you got to look at the system itself, it's really screwed. So we got played, and now nobody did anything. And so there's people implicated in this Pelican Brief sort of scenario. They're stacking decks. They're buying politicians with guilt implications. So like I said, when the mob control, because the country club law allowed them to, what they did, the country club law does not believe in me. They do not believe I'm worth anything because they stole my wallet, and they've got a hard sell, that stolen wallet body snatchers. So they're trying to desecrate the source. So they do not believe. They will not acknowledge. We won't negotiate with the victim. It's like, well, we stole your wallet. We're not going to negotiate with the victim to say, because that's, healthcare, I guess. So because they threw me outdoors and let the mob control me, they didn't just throw me outdoors. They severely crippled and handicapped me, then threw me outdoors to be fair to the mob that was going to screw me for their porno country club law, laughing their ass off through the windows, playing hardball, small ball, hardball, having the time of their, because they do have some value because they control percentages of the wealth. So they can seemingly do that even though it's stupid, really, really stupid. A gamble. But hey, they're tough, hard gamblers, So the mob drags me around and puts me in high value areas where the country club law, the people with money just don't do anything. They allow it to happen. So then, because of its global asset valuations, the global banks are being pillaged by the mob, then the people that would like to be international are then implicated because they are it's really bad, poor business. They're allowing this bank robbery to happen as a joke. It's just a game. Yeah. So they've dragged me around to all these high value areas. I'm trying to escape. I'm trying to say, hey, look, I know what I'm worth. Somebody help. Throw me a lifeboat. There's party barges all around with people popping bubbly with my name on it. My family's bubbly. My family's alcohol. But I can't. I'm dog paddling in the seas, being eaten by sharks right next to the party barges. Every time I try to climb up, they beat me in the head. Get back in there. But if I die, they'll throw me something, just a temporary life raft where I am on life support. But they won't let me get into the boat because it's my boat for the most part. They've already they've chopped shopped and sold it off and they've charged a ton on my bank account. What's going on. They don't want an audit. They're terrified of margin call because they did this loophole, whatever you want to call it, the corn loophole, which is really sketchy at best. Because, just pay your damn bills. That's all it is, a percentage or figure something out in order to protect the global banks. But they want to be the goddamn master, that's what it's all about, being the master. It's stupid pride gambling is what it is. Well, because they've got the pride diploma debt bondage in arrears that I'm not allowed to fix. It's like I can't get healthy because so many people have utilized my body. So my limitations are that I'm handicapped, that I'm not able to utilize my body properly in order to be fair to those that are screwing me. Then I have to turn the other cheek, worship the stab wounds, and as wells, and then let them stab me again, and then beautify them and pay for their health care. Yeah, that's real smart. So yeah, the genetics don't really matter. What really, they worship the hacks. The hacks are precedences. Cafeteria-style hacks. So what happened was my entire life I was driven around and hacked. Certain precedences were set. That was what my life was. I was driven through a slaughterhouse where precedents, hacks, marks, scars were set into my body. Then they were picking and choosing cafeteria-style benefits plan, which hacks or scars they wanted to worship based upon how much money it delivered. So they would pick and choose pertaining to the cases So I was hacked a lot. They don't use all the hacks. They use whatever benefits them to keep me captive. They change hacks pertaining to the scenario at hand. So the different hacks to me were then are worshipped depending upon, and it's these once again, it's that Mississippi misinterpretation, manipulation of M-A-R-X as M-A-R-K-S lessons, I guess. And that it really, it's strange logic. But so there's all sorts of precedences that are utilized by certain factions as dogma, doctrine, that sort of logic based. But the whole problem is the body itself, it's all done under illegal auspices, trying to hide under the umbrella of freedom of religion, but religion it's sketchy at best. And then law on one side, accounting on another, religion on one side, science and medicine on the other. It's really sketchy putting all the pieces together. Then I got to beautify it in any way possible. And then it's just really strange. I mean, it's a stupid gamble. I mean, I've wasted most of my life in order to build this Faulty Towers. The BBC comedy show Faulty Towers. That's what they did. They built Faulty Towers. But they're so smart because they worship the degrees so much. They're so valuable. They're the Doctor Who dats that I've got to make it well because they're so valuable because they wanted to be cheap skateboarders, the ramps, it just doesn't make any sense. It's bad business. I mean, it's poor judgment, in my estimation.